India has emerged as a star performer, and India is likely to contribute over 16% to global growth as per the International Monetary Fund. And it's not just that. The World Bank has also said in its latest report that look, India is outperforming and leading the charts as far as remittance receipts is concerned at $125 billion. So both these reports and projections really coming out for India. And to decode this further, we're joined by senior business economist Sanchita Mukherji. Sanchita, thank you for joining us and decode this for us and our viewers that look, we're not just leading the charts as far as growth is concerned, but it's also remittances at the moment.
Thank you so much for having me over here, Sakshi. As I'd always spoken in my previous interviews with NDTV, it's in the last couple of years, a lot of things have, it's been very transformational for India as an economy. Like you rightly said, it's not just the growth aspect. As an economy, I think we have really evolved to become a very, very diversified economy, so to attract this kind of a global attention that we are attracting right now because of our consumption story, because of our growth story, it's very difficult for most Southeast Asian nations, Asian countries to attract, because more or less all of the countries have a focus on, say, one or two sectors. Say somebody's, strong in textiles, somebody say strong in electronics. But look at India. I mean, we have a hugely diversified economy across sectors. I mean, you name it: realty, construction, specialty chemicals, FMCG, consumer durables, manufacturing, infrastructure, information technology, IT, healthcare, hospitality. I mean, I can rattle on, right? So that is the strength of our economy. It's the diversification across sectors, which is now coming into a global, we're in the eye of the storm, because people are actually waking up to the fact that reforms have happened in each one of these sectors, and one can look at meaningful investments, say in the form of FDI, foreign direct investment, or FII in the listed space in the stock markets.
That's right. As you said, reforms really are the highlight and now coming into the spotlight like never before. In fact, the International Monetary Fund report also mentions digital public infrastructure, strong infrastructure reforms, and how they will be crucial to sustain this growth momentum going forward for India as well. So, your thoughts really on these sectors in particular?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think UPI has been one of the biggest game changers, and the kind of digitization that has happened post UPI. I mean, most IMF, World Bank, they have actually highlighted this, the UPI payment system, the biggest payment system in the world, to the other central banks, that countries need to follow suit. Like India's lowest common denominator, that person sitting in the hinterlands, who would be at the mercy of all the middlemen and commission driven, they can actually get the direct benefit directly in their accounts through the UPI. I mean, how marvelous is that? And that has really propped up consumption. If you were to look at the consumption story, I was just reading certain reports, demographics, people who are earning from 5.5 to 25 lakh average income, the increase has been five-fold from 2011-12 till date, and per capita has doubled in from 2014 onwards till date. Look at the taxpayer base. Taxpayer base is exploded in terms of today. We are close to 59.1% taxpayer base of 300 million people in consuming 1.4 billion people overall population. By 2047, we have been projected to be 1.6 billion people with almost over 500 million taxpayers. That's almost 78% of the taxpayer base of the population. So that's huge. These
That's huge.
numbers
That's huge.
give us
Yeah,
a chance that, although we're not a developed economy, by 2047 we can at least have a good chance of becoming a middle earning income economy.
right. Very, very important data points there highlighted by you. And of course, the IMF report also saying that how employment levels in India have surpassed pre pandemic levels. And while the informal sector continues to dominate, as you were also referring to with the tax base and so on, formalization has progressed essentially. So, do you think formalization progressing is also one of the key factors going forward?
Absolutely. And
Formalization
those
of
are, that's totally, and that is very reflective in the numbers, in the corporate earnings which are coming out. And the numbers don't lie, right? So there was a lot of debate in K-shaped recovery, whether rural consumption is taking off or not, employment. Now, the fact of the matter is, it's the numbers which are there in the listed space. So, the numbers which credibly show that so much of investment has actually happened in infrastructure, in manufacturing. I mean, look at Indian manufacturing, right? It has been languishing for decades. They've only spoken about it. And the last few decades, whenever we have had growth spurts, those growth spurts have come at a cost. And what is the cost? Because a lot of leverage, a lot of lending has happened from the public sector banks in those growth spurts, which were not productive growth, right?
Right.
They created a real estate asset bubble, all of that nonsense. Now, I think in the last 10 years, there's been massive cleanup of the financial services sector. The NPA levels are now, our bank, the balance sheets are one of the cleanest in the world. So the credible offtake which is happening in credit right now, it's going into infrastructure, it's going into manufacturing. There's a lot of push by the government capex. There's a lot of push by the private capex to address India as a nation that we are a viable manufacturing factory to the world, and it need not just be China. So that is the message coming out, and that is where the employment is happening.
Yeah, a very, very strong message there, like you mentioned. And lastly, the International Monetary Fund report also praising India's financial sector in particular, saying it has been resilient and the strongest in several years. So, your thoughts on that, and of course, going forward, the sectors that you would be bullish on.
Yes, like I mentioned before, previous growth spurts have all been very leveraged growth. And as we can all make out, this leverage kind of a growth really does not augur well for anybody. I mean, look at all the developed nations in today's world. Why? I mean, the basic question that will hit anybody's head would be, why is India doing so well, whereas the rest of the nations, say Europe, US, UK, etc., are not? The very fact is, every time they have tried to do something good in the economy, they have printed notes, right? Now, you can afford to do that if you're a US dollar or a euro or a pound, right? Because these are hard currencies, ours is not. But what is the fallout? When you start printing indiscriminately, what happens that money actually never makes its way back into productive economy like manufacturing. What happens is it gets invested back into real estate, into stock markets, into cryptocurrencies of the world, and things like that, which is very, very speculative. That kind of activity takes precedence over productivity. India
Right.
handled it a little differently. They gave a push, a fiscal push, through investing in the infrastructure, through removing supply chain bottlenecks, making the ease of business much better, bringing down the corporate taxes. So this actually gave a lot of the Make in India push, PLI schemes, in manufacturing, that's production linked incentives. These kind of things started off this whole cycle, which was very much required in the manufacturing sector. So right now, if you look at diversified economy, the listed numbers are coming out very strongly. So banks have cleaned up their act. So financial services definitely. Information technology has not rallied so much this year in the stock market vis-a-vis infrastructure, manufacturing, all of that, where the valuations are quite expensive. But however, next year, when US starts cutting rates, I think information technology is a good sector to look at that point in time.
Right. So ease of doing business, India, of course, emerging as a star performer, and like you mentioned, reforms really coming into play. So it's investments and reforms really across sectors that is now showing us a solid picture really for India, and therefore these projections are coming out. Thank you so much for decoding this for our viewers and for helping us understand really going forward which sectors and which reforms will really sort of take this even further. Thank you so much for your time and this interaction.
Thank you.